Hi, Gold Derbyites. Welcome back to another edition of Awards Magnet. I'm Deputy Editor Ethan Alter, and today you'll be hearing my interview with the great Richard Linklater, the writer-director behind such seminal movies as Dazed and Confused and the Before trilogy. He's got two movies in Oscar contention this year. The first is Blue Moon, which is playing in theaters now. That movie stars Ethan Hawke as composer Lorenz Hart, who penned such classic songs as the title track for Blue Moon and My Funny Valentine. The second is Nouvelle about French filmmaking icon Jean-Luc Godard. That movie is also playing a limited theatrical release right now, and it comes to Netflix on November 14th. While those two films sound very different, in the interview, we actually touch on the way they connect and inform each other. So enjoy the conversation and make sure to have your own Linklater doubleheader soon. Hi, everyone. Please welcome Richard Linklater into Awards Magnet. He's here talking about both of his movies that he has out in theaters right now, Blue Moon and Nouvelle. Welcome, Richard. Great to have you here.
How you doing?
Great. It's so funny. I was just thinking last night. I was rewatching Slacker last night in preparation for this, and it took me back to when I saw it for the first time. I think I was 12 years old, a 12-year-old film buff, read about the film, and I was like, oh, I've got to track this down. And I found it, watched it, loved it, and been following you ever since. So thank you for raising me from boyhood to adulthood as a film lover. It's been great to follow you all these years.
When I was making that film, I was not thinking it was for 12-year-olds, but that's great. That says a lot about you. But anyway, I wish I would have filmed like that at 12. So.
I had very permissive parents, which was nice. Yes,
yeah. That's
but it's funny looking back over your career. You have two movies out right now, as you mentioned, and this is actually the third time in your career where that's happened. 2001 with Waking Life and Tape, and then again 2006 with Scanner Darkly and Fast Food Nation. So this is you're completing the hat trick. Is it funny to you when that happens and you have these two movies out at once?
Not to brag, it happened last year too. Hitman, and I had an HBO documentary called Hometown Prison. So I had two films last year. So, but who's counting? You know.
Is it just a quirk of timing? Like you just realize this is sometimes how things fall, and that's how it goes.
Yeah, those other ones, in the early ones, it was like one of them was animated that took a year to animate. So in the meantime, I made another, and they came to the finish line at the same time. But there was actual gaps in time. This one. Actually, I did shoot these back to back. I shot Nouvelle in spring in Paris, locked picture editing, and then we went to Ireland. We had been building the Sardi set, and then we went and shot that in 15 days in Ireland. So I did do those back to back. I remember Ethan Hawke was asking me, like, are you going to have the energy? How do you feel? And after Nouvelle, I said, no, I have more energy. I'm ready to make another film. And then after Blue Moon, I was like, okay, I need some time off. Right. Very draining.
It was about right.
Yeah. One was the beginning of a career and all that exhilaration. One was the end of a career. Larry Hart kind of depletes your battery completely. And
okay. Well, let's go in alphabetical order and start with Blue Moon. I think one of the things that interests me so many of your movies interrogate time. You're very interested in time and how that works. What I like about Blue Moon is that you're working about. I think it's an interrogation of space. I was really paying attention. It's a limited setting, that film, but with each scene you widen out the world that it takes place in. We should say it takes place in a bar that bleeds over into a restaurant. And I really like the way you slowly reveal different elements of that environment throughout the movie. Was that something that you were thinking about going in, creating a bigger world out of a small world?
I think on paper, films need to be expansive. They're like, oh, one room sounds boring, sounds like a play. And I was like, I never thought of that, of Blue Moon that way. I was like, no, Sardi's is a big location. Just think how your own mind processes time and space. Right. If you went out, you go to a play, then you go to a bar for a couple hours. That's normal human behavior. And in this location, you're not in a closet. The whole thing. There's a bathroom, there's a bar, so it was really just exploring that space and the people that would come in. To me, that's exciting, that you can make a film that's cinema. So I never saw that as a limitation. I mean, it's a bit of a challenge, but it's not like, I can think that could be very cinematic. So we were just exploring that space the way Larry's kind of living that space. He's very comfortable at the bar, but then he has to kind of, now I got to go talk to Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein, who came in, and that's more uncomfortable over there. And then he finds a little cubby hole to talk to Rodgers, and then he goes back and one trip to the bathroom, then he pulls Elizabeth into the closet there for a while. They have that intimate scene. So, you know, it's just an exploration of space. To me, that's very cinematic, not really theatrical at all. It's so intimate, you know? So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mentioned tape earlier, and that's definitely the most claustrophobic of your films.
yeah,
That's a very small location, a motel room
that's
only.
Sardi's. It's a shitty motel room in Michigan. That is supposed to be, those walls are kind of closing in, actually, if you
Right, exactly. It's expanding out. It's like
yeah.
closing in on the characters. Well, did that film help you specifically preparing for this one and knowing that you go being in that most claustrophobic setting for that one?
Yeah, you know, 20 plus years ago, Ethan and I, yeah, that 6-day shoot in the little motel room was, we thought, oh, this one, it's like tape, but with a budget and more time, and it's some more elaborate, you know, we built the set and everything, you know, so it was, yeah, it did, because it was also real time, which is its own cinematic challenge, you know, you can't really, it all has to work. It becomes, for me, a very rehearsal intensive process. You can't really cut around things. It all is you. The great thing, you can't delude yourself. What you're shooting is going to be the movie. You can't say, "Oh, we'll fix it in post." So the performances, everyone has to be at full. It's full on. You know, I like that feeling though.
You mentioned earlier how Ethan sort of holds court in that one bar specifically, and I did notice each time he leaves that environment, he's diminished. Not only because he's shorter in the film, the way you frame him to reflect the character, but he's also more pleading. He doesn't seem to have the mastery, and that definitely that's the space where he's king, for lack of a better word. And then everywhere else, it seems like he's a smaller person, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, the world's not very inviting to Larry. You know, he's an odd little creature in the world. He's uncomfortable by nature. People aren't attracted to him. You know, he would find comfort at a bar. There's something about sitting up on a bar stool makes you kind of even with everyone. And, you know, the Bobby Cannavale, the bartender, Eddie, you know, they kind of have to listen to you. It's like a therapist you're sort of paying, you know, so he's just comfortable there. And, you know, he is Lauren's Hart, kind of a famous guy. So, you know, such an interesting personality. But yeah, the real world unnerves him a little bit. And you do see that height comes into play, which it was such an important character trait. I mean, on one hand, people go, oh, no one even knows who Lawrence Hart is really or cares how tall he was. But for the character, we're like, no, he has to be short. That's such a big characteristic of him. And for almost, you know, 6 feet tall Ethan to suddenly be looking up at everybody is, I could see his character just like, oh my God, it's a different world. You know, we're very heightist world we live in. And so, yeah, it was fascinating to see Ethan just kind of diminished. The whole part was to take away Ethan. Everything about Ethan had to kind of disappear, starting with his height. And then we go height, we go hair, we go everything, you know, it's just, he's a different guy, you know. It was really kind of difficult. I don't think either of us had done anything quite like that, because it's a very deductive process. Usually I think, you know, rehearsing and shooting, you're building your ideas and who they are, you're kind of building things up. This was taking things away. The last image of Ethan, I just wanted him to be this little Larry is just nothing. He's just this open little sensitive open wound in the world. He's just a brain and a wit and a mouth, but bodily he's kind of reduced to nothing, you know. So it was amazing to watch Ethan go through that transformation. He was like, I don't, you know, I'm at the limit of my talent. I go, yeah, me too. It was draining. It was fun to see my friend pushing himself so hard. You know, I have to say, you know.
Yeah, no, I've read interviews with you where you talked about wanting to strip Ethan away from his masculine abilities and things like that. You've said so. It is a very. Did that change your dynamic as a director and actor? You've worked together so well. You must have established a rapport. Did you notice a difference this time? It sounds like it was.
Oh, it saved us. Like I told him at some point, like if we were working together for the first time, you would have punched me by now, because I'm being such a, you know, little naggy director. And reminding him, I'm so annoying, you know, I'm just an annoying director, but but you know, ultimately he knows I have his back. And yeah, that's what 30 years can do for you. But you know, we haven't worked together. We realized since the end of Boyhood, we hadn't really rolled film in 10 years together. didn't feel like that. We were developing this and other things and all, talking, but so it's good. I think when we came back together, it wasn't just to, fart around and have fun. It was like, oh, we came back with a challenge unlike any we'd ever done before. So it was there were times we looked up and was like, okay, this is, we're glad we're here. We're glad we're having this opportunity to really push ourselves in our own little way,
I also have to shout out Andrew Scott as Richard Rogers, who's really terrific here and does a terrific job in that part. What was your approach to directing him? Because Richard Rogers is more well known than Lorenz Hart. I wondered how you approached that.
God, we're so blessed. Andrew was able to, he was shooting Knives Out at this time, and he was able to get away and come join us for, come rehearse for 7 days and fly back, come back. So unlike Ethan and, Bobby and Margaret Qualley were kind of there, it was kind of appropriate because Rogers does kind of flit in and lights up the thing and then, leaves. And, so it kind of worked for us, but just so blessed. Andrew, there's just no one like him. He's such a good, just such a sublime, great actor. And we needed that. It was kind of amazing to see two just such superb actors, like what they can bring in a short amount of time, to see them kind of conjure a 25-year artistic relationship, to see on their faces the joy and the pain. And I mean, they're going through a breakup on this night. It's a breakup movie, gut-wrenching, very complex. There's love there, but is there strain and, built up pain and hostility even, so it demanded this kind of roller coaster ride emotionally from them, and very subtle too. It's in private, even though they're in a public space. It's not gonna spill over. They can't yell at each other, but it's just under the surface. So getting that tone, but to see them work so hard and kind of find all that, they're masterful. So what can you say?
What's at the center of so many of their discussions is that eternal debate between art and commerce, and certainly Richard Rogers is embracing commerce a little bit more as he's finding success with Oklahoma, and Lorenz Hart is still thinking about art and wanting to to take daggers in satire. He's always talking about satire and wanting maybe things that aren't as popular. In your own career, I'm sure you faced that divide. How do you interrogate that? How's that shaped that eternal debate shaped your own career?
Well, I don't think most artists have to decide one or the other. You are kind of who you are. There's some people that just approach work with a more ease with sentimentality than others, and more go for realism, or you kind of can't help but be who you are. So I admire people who are themselves, and unabashedly. And some of the greatest filmmakers go there. You could say that's very sentimental, but damn, it works. It works really well in art. Damn it. Richard Rogers is amazing because he had these two almost exclusive careers. I remember really getting to know Rogers and Hart music and not realizing it's the same Rogers that I grew up, Rogers and Hammerstein, listening to in Sound of Music and Oklahoma. And I didn't know it was the same Rogers even. The music's so different. And you start to study it and you realize, well, Rogers, I mean, to me, he's one of the greatest composers of the 20th century, but he wrote the music first and Hart wrote the lyrics to his melodies. Oscar Hammerstein wrote the words and Rogers is writing the music to Oscar's. So you get this kind of soaring, beautiful kind of bigger quality, but he's just adapting to the stories. And I think he does sense times are changing. And, he's one of those guys who's able to change with the times. I don't think he's cynical about it. I just think he sees that's what he's feeling. He says, audiences, they want to feel more. They want to, this kind of satire. There's a war going on. People don't really want that. He's one of those blessed artists who, he's got his, finger in the air of which way the wind's blowing, and like he wants to please, I think. But I mean, he's just kind of being himself, like, hey, this is a business. I'm going to try to deliver the goods. Where I don't think Larry thinks twice about that. He just wants to do what he wants to do. Some people are blessed with that kind of populist touch. They know where it's going, and they're going there too. So that was him. He's not a bad guy. He's an amazing composer. But yeah, that's what's so heartbreaking about, there aren't really any bad people. It's just times are changing and leaving poor Larry behind, and the partnership's ending. So it's a double breakup, Larry with his partner and with the times. So there's something very poignant about, most artists don't think there's an expiration date on their art or their careers, but sadly, popular taste, things can kind of sweep you away.
Yeah. Well, that actually shifts nicely into Nouvelle Vague, because that's a case of an artist discovering the time, making the times. Essentially, Jean-Luc Godard came out of criticism and helped create a filmmaking revolution. So he was someone who saw where the puck was going, for lack of a better word, and followed it. And that's really what that film depicts, I think.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty exhilarating time, late 50s, early 60s in cinema. I mean, lighter cameras. There's a lot of possibilities. There's really new waves happening all around the world, but nowhere bigger than Paris. I think the concentration of filmmakers and great films coming out, it's really unprecedented. So that's why we call the film Nouvelle Vague. But, Godard is the most unique of them all. His cinematic brain is completely different. And he's obsessed with, if you're going to do something different, you have to do it differently, and he's driving everybody crazy. But, you're watching kind of a revolution, but no one knows it except maybe him. It's like something new happening, the cinematic language, the landscape. There's a new kind of film for a new kind of audience. This sort of, American crime film genre, low budget American crime film, filtered through kind of a French cinephile, late 50s existentialist consciousness that becomes, this totally unique film, that really rides on Belmondo and Seberg's charisma, which is derived in very different ways. Godard's really trying to make a film about them, and he's having to get Seberg to find that kind of looseness and spontaneity that he's striving for, which, given her background, is a big ask. She's come out of the studio system. It's not unreasonable for an actor to ask, who's my character and do we have a script? Can't hold that against anyone.
I think, again, totally fair question, I think, on any actors. It's somebody I mentioned. I was watching Slacker again recently. I had forgotten that movie opens in one of the opening sequences with a body lying in the street, much like Breathless ends with a body lying in the street. And the film in general is very new wavy. So I have to wonder, is that your direct homage to Breathless in those opening moments when you were doing that?
I don't remember the body being in the street being an homage. That was something that had happened in my neighborhood, the lore anyway, years before. But there is something, cinema likes a body in the street, or a body. Got to have a dead body around. So we left it pretty quickly, but there it was. So, but yeah, I mean, my film Slacker was definitely next generation, kind of Nouvelle Vague inspired. I didn't have a traditional script. It was working very loosely structured, obviously. Wasn't even, it's, in a way, it's more radical because it doesn't even have a story, no beginning, middle, and end. It's just kind of a sequence of, but I think the Nouvelle Vague gives you permission to try stuff like that. The notion of cinema as a personal expression, just the freedom to make a film about whatever's on your mind or to try things. And, so that's why the Nouvelle Vague is still important 65 years later, because it sent that out into the world, that just make a film about anything, it lowered the stakes of cinema in a good way, the way the B writers maybe, write a book about a trip you took, on the road or something, just your life, what's in front of you was worthy of expression. You can carve stories out of the real world that's right in front of you. That's a pretty freeing thought for an artist. You don't have to be in some big genre or conjure up these other worlds. You can carve it out of the world as you're experiencing it. So that's in that tradition for sure.
Yeah, definitely. It also strikes me, it's another film where you're interrogating space a bit, where where Blue Moon takes place in one location the entire time. Nouvelle Vague is out in the streets. I don't know if you had any standing sets or if you were just shooting in whatever locations you can find. And so that's interesting. You're using the space around you to capture that moment in the moment, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, famously, the Nouvelle Vague was just took to the streets, making films almost like documentary style. So I wanted Nouvelle Vague to capture that kind of open spirit of that. But obviously, we face a different Paris 64 years later than they could just show up and shoot. We had to recreate all that. So it's a really meticulously designed movie, but I don't want it to feel that way. I want it to feel like we just showed up, and that spontaneity that they had, I wanted my film to feel. But it's all a trick. we had we had to build everything, and that we rehearsed so much, and we did that. But everybody was up for the challenge, and it was really exhilarating. It was fun to get in there. Everybody cared so much about the historical recreation, getting that every little detail right. Every department head, everybody had really, even the extras casting. It was like, we're casting extras. We're looking at the original film and casting extras in the background that look like those people. That's the kind of detail we were going for. So,
absolutely. In terms of casting, it's interesting to me that Godard and the other actors playing the French filmmaking icons in a lot of cases aren't professional actors, or at least haven't acted a lot. And the one main person you have is Zoe Deutsch, who plays Jean Steenberg. So you do have that continuity of a movie star playing a movie star, and everyone around her not being necessarily that professional. I'm sure that was deliberate on your part, but in terms of that approach, to decide to do that approach,
it was a perfect analog to the movie. Here comes Zoe Deutsch from Hollywood, with a career, and comes in learning French, and it was perfect. It had all these unknown French actors. But unlike Seberg and Godard, Zoe totally was such a pro, got with the system, didn't have any conflicts, and just worked hard, and everybody got along so well. So that was it. But, I was blessed to have all these. I mean, there's always great young talent everywhere. And this gave an opportunity, a lot of young French actors making their debut here. And they were just perfect, just perfect, and totally ready to go. It was really exhilarating for them. And the whole production was so fun.
Yeah. And I believe this is certainly at least the most extensive time you've worked in black and white, if not the first. What was that like, doing an entire movie in black and white? Challenge.
Feature in black and white, first feature in 1:3:7 ratio, first foreign language, a lot of firsts for me. But it was just the way the film needed to look and feel. That was kind of the film I imagined 13 years ago or so. When I was thinking about it, it was like, it was going to feel like I told everybody, it is we're making a film in 1959, not by Godard or Truffaut, but one of the other lesser known Nouvelle Vague filmmakers made this film. It was found either in an attic or an archive here. I just was really making an artifact from the time. So that usually doesn't work in cinema, and that was its own challenge. But I thought in this case that it was such a distinct look and feel in that era. I thought we could pull it off. And that's just how the Nouvelle Vague looked to Americans, at least. It's black and white, French language, to me, is the language of cinema. It's like a score, the French language, and then English subtitles. I even got the old school subtitles, So that was the conceit.
You obviously worked in Paris for Before Sunset, which was again a very American visiting Paris story, and here you're supposed to be telling the story from the perspective of the French. So how did you change being the sort of de Tocqueville, reverse de Tocqueville in the room? Being the other, how did that influence the way you shot Paris, the way you wanted to depict Paris?
Wow, it was night and day difference. Yeah, back in 2003, when we were over there shooting Before Sunset, it really was an English language film. We were real outsiders. I remember being kind of conflicted with locations. Like, felt like a bureaucratic nightmare, really, even for our low budget little film. But this time I was so inside the French. I was working with a French company, very established. They know everybody, 100% French crew cast. Zoe and I were the only Americans, so it was just so French and so much easier. They kind of own the town, and we got everything we needed, and they have so much an insider view of the French industry, which I admire greatly. They really have a unique film industry and culture. This film was kind of completely financed. It never left the French border. We had subsidies and all the usual ways you get a French film made,
As you mentioned, Lorenz Hart and Blue Moon depicts some at the end of their career. Nouvelle Vague depicts someone at the beginning of their career. In both cases, the films are the thing that often outlast the person, or the films or the music in the case of Blue Moon. Do you think about that in terms of your own legacy? Do you expect, will you be okay if your films are what's remembered and maybe not necessarily your name so much, just like with Lorenz Hart and Blue Moon?
Oh yeah. I'm a behind the camera personality. Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't need to. Yeah, no. If anyone's remembered at all, people have asked me, what would Godard, they're neither one's still with us, obviously. What would Godard or Lorenz Hart think about the films you've made? And I was like, oh, I think Larry Hart, even though we're depicting like one of the worst nights of his life, probably, he would be tickled. He would, 82 years after his death, he would just have a huge smile on his face and be flattered that he's remembered and his songs are remembered. And I mean, he knew it. He had written, as he said, lyrics that will cheat death. We're still singing those songs. They're the greatest songs ever written. And then about Godard, it's like, oh, he definitely would have approved us making it because he said yes to everything. He was very loose and kind of open. Yeah, he didn't care. He gave people permission to do everything. But I would think he wouldn't care at all about the finished film. I don't think he would watch it, or I wouldn't, I don't think he would give a rip, so the two different personalities.
Both captured very well. And yeah, both films are terrific. Everyone listening, watching, please see them. They're both playing in theaters now. And Nouvelle Vague comes to Netflix on November 14th. And Blue Moon should be available for streaming soon as well. So again, thank you very much, Richard, for your time today. And
great talking with you.